This conference will now be recorded.
If I can turn it down, but we'll see if it gets really loud or not. Let's see.
I got a call from Holly of Trajectory. And I just told, because she was asking about the meeting, and I said, you know, someone is always welcome to come.
Right.
If they want. I said, you know, I'm waiting to hear back some commentary from Bill and where he's at right now. And I said, you know, but I don't see anything specifically on the agenda. But, you know, she said, well, could it come up under new business? I said, you know, it could. So, said, so maybe he wants to come a little later.
Oh.
You know, or I said, he could do the whole thing if you want.
Right, right. Okay.
We'll see.
All right. Well, it's 6 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting to order for zoning board. And if we could have roll call, please, Mary, I'll have you.
Okay. Mr. Emmer, Mr. Eubank,
Here.
Mr. Koning, Mr. Booker,
Here.
Mr. McDougall,
Here.
and Mr. Pitney.
Here. All right. We do have a quorum, and since the chairman is ill tonight, I don't know if we need to elect somebody or just to have someone run the meeting.
I usually we do a motion to have somebody act as the chairman pro tem.
Okay, so if someone wants to make a motion to have somebody be the chairman pro tem for tonight's meeting, please make the motion.
I'll make a motion that Frank Eubank be the pro tem.
Second. Okay, any discussion? All right, no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I will continue.
Do we have to do a roll call on that one too, or?
Well, I suppose we should.
Yeah,
since,
I mean, I know we have a quorum,
everyone's
but not
here. Everyone's here, no one's virtual.
Oh, that's true, nobody on the board.
Okay.
That's virtual.
So we're okay.
Yeah.
All right, and just since you mentioned it, Dennis, we are able to meet virtually. The governor has declared a disaster declaration for another 30 days. It goes through February 5th of 2023. That allows us to meet remotely under the statute. We do have to have certain contingencies in place to do that, and that's either having our village attorney or village president or another board member present, which we fulfill that that requirement. And as you mentioned, Dennis, the votes would need to be all by roll call, but since everyone is here in person, we don't have to have them by roll call. So it's still not wrong to do it by roll call. We can always defer to that. And so we'll move on with the agenda. Does anyone have a conflict of interest with what is on the agenda tonight? All right. Not hearing any. If you do believe you have a conflict of interest, just let me know and we'll address it at that point. Did not receive any one signing up for public comment tonight, so we will move on to the number 4. And it's the approval of the minutes from the December 5th, 2022 meeting. Now, Mary was able to send out an updated, detailed revision of all of those minutes. And I don't know if anyone had the opportunity to review them all. We could take a motion to approve the minutes as presented, or we could lay it over to the next meeting so that people could have time to review it. And I don't know what your pleasure is. I did take a look, and there are a few changes I saw. But I had the opportunity to look at them. I don't know if everyone did.
I got through about half of them this afternoon, so I would make a motion that we lay over approval of these minutes to the next week.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion regarding this motion? Okay. Again, all in favor, say aye.
I got it.
Oh,
Oh, Tony, yeah, you're right. Don't I have to still, we're here, so no, we don't have to.
right.
I just have it in my head.
I know. I mean,
It'll be
it's
roll
been
call.
for so long that
We've
we've
been
done
doing it that way, yeah.
Yeah. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
And if I could just make one comment as you're doing those, and I did say it in the email, that give me your feedback in terms of if you want this way. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time because of the subject matter,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that we had a new person that had done it, and I mean, and obviously, I was listening to it for my changes, but it takes a lot more time to do what I was doing, and
Right.
I don't want to do things you don't want me to do, but I just don't know how important it is in your discussion that you have some specificity.
It's nice to have some specificity with certain things, but sometimes there can be too much. I think in this particular instance, it was good to have it because we discussed the ordinance in detail. So I think having it all in there, let everybody know what the changes or what the requests were. But when it comes to our regular types of meetings, we probably don't need it word for word. But again, it's going to be the subject matter. I think it's going to be a case by
Fully
case
agree.
basis.
This
So-
was necessary
Yeah.
for this matter.
Yeah, I mean, typically we wouldn't, have, I mean, and this certainly wasn't verbatim by any means.
Right.
There would have been pages and pages and pages, but, typically we might say that we discussed some changes that we felt were necessary to a such and such ordinance.
Mhm.
And might just summarize the changes versus what people were thinking. But I just knew too that Mr. Pitney was new coming in and we're not done with this, so that maybe that would help, so.
Nope, I thank you for asking that, and, now you kind of know, I think you have an idea of what needs to be, more specific and what doesn't. Since
Right.
You've been doing this for 30 years.
Forever, yeah, and I mean, and typically it would be village staff that's doing it. But I mean, putting somebody new in there to say, here, take this 3-hour meeting and figure it out. That's, especially based on the content, when you're not familiar with the subject matter, that's tough.
Okay. All right. We will go on then to the approval of Cash Drive and plat map, and we have Seth Gronwald here from Fair Graham, who is our village engineer.
Just very quickly,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, is that the correct spelling of Cash Drive?
That is not the correct spelling of Cash Drive. I believe it's Kasch.
Yep.
Typographical error on the agenda, but thank you for pointing that out. So the public will know if they see the agenda that it's not a new street. It's one that's in existence. That's just spelled incorrectly on the agenda. All right. So Seth, I'm going to have you unmute yourself and be part of the conversation here. And I know that you had your office prepared the plat for us, and I believe you gave a copy to but Bill is not here, and we don't have the big drawing in front of us.
Would you
So
like me to share your screen with it?
Yeah, let me go ahead and make you a presenter, if you don't mind.
Okay.
And all right. I'm trying to get you here, but as I'm putting my mouse down, it's jumping back and forth. I don't know why. I'm just going to make you an organizer, and I hope it works. You should, I think, have the opportunity to share your screen.
All right. Can you guys see that?
Looks like we are. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's hard to see, but we can see it. Let me see if I can. I don't know if I can. Any ideas on what it might be able to like make it larger? Or is that going to be it? Because he's presenting it, I don't think I can make it larger. There we go. It's a little easier to see that. There, thanks, Seth.
Yep. All right. So just a quick little background. What we're looking to do here with this plat is, after conversation with Frank and Chad and some future potential developments that have come to light, we kind of took a look at this platting effort for the Highlands property that the village secured as part of the lawsuit that with Mantle Development. And so we are looking to create basically a 3-lot subdivision so that it'll should future development occur a little bit more quickly, I guess. And so our thoughts are is that we create a one large overall lot, which would be lot 1. We would dedicate Cash Drive and to allow for the connection on both the east and west ends of the parcel. Create lot 2, which is basically an extension of the property line from lot 4 to the north, straight down to the south. And then create lot 3, which is basically just created by way of dedication of the right of way. The intent of this plat would not be that all of this structure, as far as the roadway, would actually be constructed at this time. It would be intent that any future development would be required to extend the public infrastructure as necessary as part of their development. But by having this process in place, it helps future developers save a lot of time off of their effort as far as getting something approved and built. So by having a final plat already in place with a lot created, will save a lot of time and even some cost for these future developments. So that's, I guess, Frank, if I missed anything, let me know. But that's kind of a high level background on why we're looking at doing what we're doing right now. And in this scenario, you'll see if you look closely, and I'm sure you guys have already had a chance to review, but we're essentially providing utility access to each of the lots for sanitary sewer and water as well. Anything else, Frank?
No, and I'm just going to come up here to the screen because it may be a little hard for people to see the numbers here. So I'm just going to point things out. So here we have lot 1, which is the larger portion, and that's going to be its own lot where we would like a larger development to be. And most likely it's going to be the 8.52 acres plus this outlot 1 of 2.96 acres would be all combined. This outlot right here is dedicated as a detention pond or retention pond for all of this area in here to have the water flow out, since we don't have, I think it's a curb and gutter type thing where it goes out into the detention area. But over here is lot 2, and this is right across from right across from the property next to Athletic Edge. This is right behind the Dollar General. And the village did accept an offer of purchase of this lot 2. And so we're going to be moving forward with a closing on that property with the buyer. And Seth had let me know that the legal description would be so much easier once we accept this plat, because we'll just reference lot 2 of this plat rather than trying to come up with a specific legal description. So that's part of the reason why we wanted to have this looked at and presented tonight. And then this is lot 3 over here, this portion down here, which is kind of just southwest of the church that was built. And this is going to be about 1.3 acres, and that would allow for either village use of that property for whatever the village wants to use it for, or for another business to buy it and develop it the way they want to develop it. So, so those are the 3 lots that are coming through on this plat. And Mary, I don't know if there's anything in particular that we need to do in terms of zoning board. I mean, the plat comes to the zoning board, but for this evening, if there's anything, just we accept the plat as presented.
Yeah, that's usually all that's done, because then the chairman signs off on it. You know,
Right.
then he gets the input and they say, yeah, it looks okay.
So the chairman has been presented with the large version of this, and if nobody has any objection to this plat, the chairman can then go ahead and sign it. And then I believe, Seth and Mary, that after it's signed, it would be recorded with the Winnebago County Recorder's Office. So then it'd be the official platting of this area of land.
Somebody in?
That's correct. Mary, wouldn't we have to take it to the village board after this?
For the approval of the plat itself? Yeah, and I think that, but as far as with the signing, with the zoning board chairman, generally the zoning board chairman then also signs it last. At least that was, pattern. But we wouldn't be having a public hearing or anything like that. We would just be presenting it to the village board for approval.
The village property at the present time?
Correct. The village owns the property.
And just kind of just as a quick backdrop, because I know you guys weren't involved at the time, Mantle Development Group had purchased this land and didn't develop it as it was supposed to. And so then a lawsuit ensued, and we basically got the property from them back with a few other concessions, nothing real major. The problem was we couldn't get really money from them because it was a corporation. It's a doctor out of California that owned it. And he had been involved with Jesse Dabson, who's a local individual.
Yep.
They had met in California, had done some commercials or something like that together. And of course, he told them, got this property, it's gonna be great for you.
I'm always.
And this guy's out in California, and he really didn't have he just wanted to make money, obviously. And so they didn't do the development as they should, and that was one of the reasons too that we were real big about making sure it got platted, because that was one of the things we sued them over, that you can't sell unplatted land. So how would we as a village then go sell land that hasn't been platted? So we're platting it as we should, and as they should have.
So the sale of lot 2 then is pending the finalization of this?
Correct. We're waiting for the finalization of this, and then once we do this, we have a meeting actually set up on Wednesday for the purchaser of that property to meet with various people in the village to get an idea of the process from this point forward, through the purchase of it, through the zoning possible changes, and then through the permitting for erecting the building that the person wants to erect. And so, yes, this is the first step in that process. And we may have someone that's interested in lot 1. That's something that we will look into a little further. We may have some possible interested parties in that lot 1.
So what does the board need to do?
So the zoning board, if there's any objection to it, if you think there's any issues with it, then you can ask your questions, you can make your statements if you have any concerns, or if you feel that it should go forward, you can make that statement too. So,
In essence, recommending approval of the
Right.
plat by the village board.
right. So I don't know if we formally need to do that, Mary. I don't think we really done that, but I suppose
We could.
we could. So I suppose if we would have a motion, to recommend that the zoning board chairman sign the plat map and that the village board accept it.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so now we can discuss it. Any discussion, any other questions or concerns that anybody might have regarding the plat map? The nice thing is, we usually don't have it this easily prepared because it's almost always done by the developer, somebody else that's presenting it to us. And so then we have to really study it to make sure it's in accordance with all of our zoning requirements and planning requirements. And there are times when we've had plats come to us that we've had to say no because they were deficient. Some were very deficient, including the previous owner of the Highlands. And so in this situation, all of those things have been met. Our village engineer obviously has done everything in accordance with that. So it's less likely that we're going to have any issues with the planning of this.
And then just as far as the order, it would go to the village board, and then after the village board passes it, then everybody signs it and it gets recorded. So Bill will sign it as chairman of the zoning board, assuming that you make that, if that recommendation passes, until it passes through the village board.
And did I hear correctly that the buyers will be paying to get the utilities extended?
The idea is the property owner in lots 1, 2, or 3 would pay, and it depends on, but yes, they would be responsible unless the village works something out with them in particular.
Okay.
And also, all of this property has been appraised.
Right.
We didn't just like pick numbers out of the air or anything.
And getting back to what you said in terms of the development agreement or negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So at this point, we're just concerned about the plat, and just making sure that this is the way we want it to be, and that the 1.1 acres of lot 2, the 1.3 acres of lot 3, and then the approximately 8.5 acres in lot 2, and then the outlying area, that's the way it should be set up. And again, after talking to Mary and Seth and Chad and all the relevant people, it seems like this is going to be the best way to set it up. And as Seth said, the roadway that's going to be extended for cash, we have it on there as to how it's to be, and it's supposed to be then paid for by the purchaser of the property to extend the road and extend all the utilities.
And it wouldn't be better to, on lot 1, I mean, that one seems very large compared to the other 2.
Mm-hmm.
This is the best use of it to do it as one big lot as opposed to dividing that one up.
Right, and Seth, if you could jump in here in a second.
So we recommend leaving the lot 1 as one larger lot because it allows the future developer more flexibility. So let's say we have a developer come in and they only want 5 of those 8 acres. Essentially, at that point, you would have another subdivision plat, just subdividing it further. And so since we don't really know what that future use may or may not be, I mean, we could end up having 5 lots, right? We could end up having one large developer. So it just kind of at this point, it makes sense to leave it as one large lot. And if we need to address future subdivisions later, we do that then.
And this way it allows for the drive to go really in the direction that we want it to go, and the utilities to go where we want them to go, and then utilize that larger kind of square rectangular area.
And I know Seth, or Frank, I believe, said that there was dedication of a detention pond area. Is there anything on the plat that talks about responsibility for maintenance of any of the areas? I just know that's been an issue sometimes, and they'll say, well, what does the plat say? And the plat doesn't say anything that we, the owner, have to do anything. So I was just wondering if that needs to get addressed or if that's in any way addressed.
I know.
I'm just reading through the easement provision. we can add language to the plat to make it clear. But in previous discussions with Frank and Chad, is that this area would remain as maintained by the village, the stormwater management area.
And if it
So-
is, maybe that we would say that that's what's going to happen. That's my only concern or question, because
No, I agree
not
with
this, but with the other ones, it becomes an issue or a question.
So I think, as you mentioned, Seth, then there could be negotiations with a buyer or buyers of those lots where the village could maintain the detention area, or the buyer of the property could maintain it. And I think that would be a negotiation with the sale of that property. So I think at this point, we won't put in there, I don't think we would want to put in there that the village or the buyer is responsible for maintaining it. I think we leave it silent, Mary, and then we'll kind of just negotiate that as part of the sale of the property. And if we never sell that property, if we never sell the outlying area, the village just continues to own it, and the village continues to maintain it.
But that outlying area does have to remain a protection area.
Correct. And depending upon my understanding, whoever the users are, when they build, they have to provide our engineers with an idea of what the rate or volume of water discharge is going to be. And then they have to look at that detention area to see if it's capable of handling that type of watershed, or whatever you want to call it, into the detention area. And so I think we had Fair Graham recently calculate the current volume, and then they might have an idea of, okay, we can allow so much to come in. So if we have, so that's part of what we'd have to look at is, if someone buys that bigger lot and they're going to have a lot more water runoff in the detention area, they may have to increase the detention area into their property to allow for the right amount. And I think we ran into that issue with the high school where the freshman baseball diamond was, where they had to enlarge that retention area right along the line of the street, because we had a lot of flooding going on with the library. And so that helped with reducing that flooded area.
Did we have any, a developer or a land development consultant look at this and make sure that we were on the right track to developing this?
We have not employed a developer. We, as Mary said, had an appraiser advise the village trustees as to what the value of these lots and other lots we acquired. And so we had in mind the use of the property, and we've had some discussions that, we've had one interested party in the larger lot, but I can't get into it. And so at this point, we know we have the other two smaller lots available to sell, and that's what we're trying to do. So we are selling the one and looking at the other use for the other one. But for right now, the lot we would have the potential to have a business there.
And we're limited in the sense that big area is unserved.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like
It's what?
it's unserved.
Right.
So that's the whole thing with somebody coming in, we need them to bring in all of this infrastructure, which was supposed to be done by the original developer and was never done. So it's not like we say, oh, we've got all of these prime lots that we can then sell. There are a few that we got that were prime lots that were served, but not the whole thing.
So there is another lot that's already been platted right next to Athletic Edge, and it's in between this larger lot and the Athletic Edge, and that one's already served, but that one is not part of this plat, it's already been platted. And that one the village could sell as well. But for right now, these 3 lots are what we're trying to get platted. So now we have them platted, we have what it's going to be, and then if somebody wants that larger one, great, we can sell it to them as is. If they want to, if they only want part of it, like Seth said, we can then subdivide it, make it smaller, and whatever the use is going to be. But as Mary said, we're very interested in having one purchaser for the lot because the IEPA is going to require us to connect the water. Right now, it kind of ends where the church is to the east, and it ends where Athletic Edge or Dollar General is to the west. And if we get anybody else that's going to be using water between those two, the whole thing has to be connected. And at that point, you really want the road put in along with the utilities. So we really want to find one buyer that's going to buy that portion or be able to put in all of that at one time. Because it really, that's the only way it's going to really make sense and cost-wise to get it done. So again, we're asking that this plat be accepted as presented, and then we would move forward with that plan. Any other discussion?
I just have an inquiry about the lots. I can't really read the acreage from here, but
yeah.
Is this all committed to commercial properties, or, because I know behind the church is residential, so I don't know if it's.
This is, I believe, general business or general industrial.
So I thought it was general business. We do have the two condo lots
We've got other lots elsewhere
that are not
that
pictured
are not
here.
part of this.
Oh, okay.
Right, we've got where the condos and townhomes are, the village also owns property there, but those have not been, some of those have been platted already, but they've not been sold. But here, these are, and Seth, if you can help me out, I don't know if we have it written on, if we have any.
Yeah, here, I'm trying to zoom in on it right here. General industrial.
General industrial, yep.
Okay.
Yep. So, because I thought, the person that's buying the lot behind Dollar General actually bought the lot behind Dollar General from German American State Bank, and then they're buying our parcel of ground. And the one is General Business District that he bought from American, and then ours is General Industrial. So that's why he's likely going to need to come in and have a zoning change to have them both zoned the same for what purpose that person wants to move forward with. And that is what we wanted, was the general industrial in that area, just because it seems like that would be the best use of the property, the best location of that kind of business. So thanks, Seth, for finding that for us. Any other questions or discussion?
It's not about that, but just to note for the record that Mr. Koenig is now present virtually.
Thank you. Yeah. We also have House Bray here, who's present in the village boardroom.
Yep, and I got it.
So we just got to call the vote, is that correct?
We got to call the vote. All right, so if there's no more discussion, all in favor, say aye.
I don't know if
We
Irv
can do it
knows
now.
what the motion is. I think he came in after.
Irv, what the current motion is a motion to recommend to the village board to accept the plat of those lots, and we're talking about the Highlands over there behind the Athletic Edge and Dollar General, and recommend that the zoning chairman then sign the plat after the village board approves it. So, okay, all right. So again, we'll call to the vote. So all in favor, say aye.
No, do I have to do a roll call because he's virtual?
Yeah.
Oh,
Right?
Now,
Now I do.
now you do. So let's do
Okay,
roll
I
call.
thought so. Mr. Emmert, Mr. Eubank,
Yes.
Mr. Koenig, Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. McDougal,
Yes.
Mr. Pitney.
Yes.
All right, that's approved. We'll go on to the zoning amendment, the RMTP. As you may remember, last zoning board meeting, we took a good long time,
Mm,
2 hours or more to go through it item by item. I think we're here till 10 o'clock.
10:15 to be
Yeah.
exact.
There you go.
Well, 10 o'clock, 10:05 doing this and 10 minutes to wrap it up.
Yeah.
But obviously, we got through it all and had the recommended changes. Now, in reviewing, I did not have an opportunity to review all of the changes, Mary, that you made, because I read through the minutes that you made, but I didn't have the time to read through this part. I know at our last meeting, we talked about having to look at the signs and how that language might apply to this, and we had a couple other things that we were gonna have you look into. And so I don't know if we're ready to approve that tonight.
Well, I can
Or-
tell you, because that's what I put in the email, that I had covered everything but the signs. Because I was working on the signs, and we've got 3 different things for the signs, as you're aware. We got language on signs in the zoning ordinance, we have language on signs in the UDO, and we have an actual sign ordinance and amendment there too. So I'm really gonna need some direction, because they're not the same in terms of what they say, and I don't know what you want. I mean, as far as which one of these do you want? So what I would suggest is I can get that language to you, and then you can tell me which of those, and tell you where they came from, and which of those you want.
I would suggest that you do that, so that you provide to each of the zoning board members each of the 3 ordinances that you're talking about. And if you can color code, the areas in the zoning and the UDO, that would be great. If you can't, that's fine. But then that way we can take a look at it maybe before, then the next.
And when you're
February.
talking about color code the areas of the zoning,
Highlight.
no, I know, but I mean, are you talking about, because are you talking about for the different zoning categories? Because this has to do with the parking and what's
Well,
required,
So if you're looking at the signs,
or the signs, I mean.
so if you're looking at the signs, there's a portion of the UDO, the original zoning ordinance, right, that has a part regarding the signs, correct?
Right, and what's happening in districts 3 and
Yeah.
4 or whatever.
So in each district, wherever it mentions signs, then just highlight it.
Oh, okay,
And then,
I get you.
and then same thing in the UDO.
I see. In the document itself, I thought you were
Yeah.
talking about a map showing
Oh,
where
no.
these signs would be in what districts, and
Oh,
that's why I was confused.
No. So just, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That way it's easier for us to kind of scroll
Oh, yeah.
through and see the highlighted parts and say, okay, that part is just signs, so. that would be good.
And do we want to be thinking about just codifying it as it pertains to this matter, or changing so it's uniform throughout the UDO?
Yeah, I think we want to do it uniformity wise,
Yeah.
right? And we want to, we learned a lot over the last 3 years, I would say, because there was some cases that came down that pretty much said that you can plant any sign anywhere at any time. It's very difficult for certain signs to regulate them. Now, other signs you can, like billboards and things like that, you can regulate the size. So I think looking at our regular village ordinance is going to be helpful too, because that'll let us know.
Right, because we had 99-3 was the actual standalone sign ordinance, and then we had to amend it because of case law that came down, and it basically was freedom of speech. There were people who had signs in their yard notifying of their church service that was coming up. And they sued because basically the town said, no, you can't do that. And I said, yes, we can, because that's my freedom of speech. And so that's why, just like political signs, can't regulate those anymore. In the old days, you used to tell people, you can't put them up more than so many days, you gotta take them down in so many days. Not anymore. They wanna leave them up all year, they can.
Now, if they put it in an illegal spot.
That's different. They
Yeah.
can't,
So we have certain places where
Oh,
they
yeah.
can or can't put them.
Right.
When we see them, a lot of times in illegal places, they're in the right of way or whatever. So we just need to understand that we can't regulate the content, or we can't regulate sometimes where it's placed, unless it's like on village property, then we can,
or if it's in any way a hazard.
right, to like seeing a stop sign or anything like that, because we've had some signs that have been blocking intersections.
I know we had some discussion about combining that 99-3 as well as the amendment into another ordinance, because I have that somewhere else. But then we ran into a lot of discussion over, well, how are we gonna regulate this, that, or the other thing? So according to my records and the village's records, we never passed a combo ordinance, but
Right.
you still will have the information with what is in each of those. And then we just have to see how do you want those to apply to this area. And then, and like you raised the point about, making them consistent, that's why I tried in the detail that I did so I can remember for myself that there are a few things in here that were grammatical errors or grammatical issues that didn't affect really the content. So I didn't make those because we had said we'll worry about those later. But there were other ones that really affected the content, so I have to make them here, and then I have to go and make those in the UDO as well.
So what we'll do is just leave the zoning amendment for RMTP on the agenda for next month. And Mary, if you can get something out to us in the next week or so, that give us time to look it over. And what I would suggest is and this is for you, Riley, so that you kind of understand, there's something called the Open Meetings Act where you cannot have discussion between board members outside of the presence of an open meeting unless it's one-on-one. You can't have the majority of the people get together and not have it be a public meeting. Mm-hmm. And so if Mary sends something out to all of us, don't reply to all and say, hey, I think we should do this, 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 and this, because now we've got a conversation going on. So what I would suggest is if you get an email that you just reply to either, Kelly is also someone that sends stuff out. So Kelly Simmons is our deputy clerk. You can respond to Kelly if she sends it out, or you can respond to Mary if she sends it out, and then say, okay, these are some things that I think we should keep in or we should take out or whatever. Let Mary know. Don't include the rest of us, and we'll all do the same thing. We'll all respond just, on our own to Mary saying, hey, everything looks great, or I think we need to change, this. And then that way we can let her know all of our requested changes. And then she can put them together and then get it back to us hopefully about a week before the meeting so that we can take a look at it and say, yep, I like it. We're ready to go at the zoning board meeting, or hey, we still need some changes, and then we can discuss it at the zoning board meeting.
And I can communicate with anybody because I'm not a board member.
Yeah.
So that's why. And it is just about village business.
Yeah.
When you can talk to Frank about, the basketball team or,
I mean, we could all talk
and
about
everybody,
Yeah.
but it's just discussion of village business.
So if we have a board of 7 people, the reality is you can't have 3 of those people in a discussion together.
Because it's a majority of a quorum.
Of a quorum, yeah.
A quorum would be 4, the majority of that 4 is 3.
So, yeah, if Mike and you and I are out somewhere and we start talking zoning, we can't. Because she'll jump in and say, you gotta stop. She'll be at home and she'll hear us and she'll say, stop.
All knowing, all seeing.
Exactly.
And then I just wanted to point out, there is a typo and it is RTMP. I just didn't want to confuse Riley. It means Research, Technology, and Manufacturing Park, so.
Thank you, Mary.
And Mary, the draft that you sent out of the minutes, does that have, is this basically the RMTP, the entire?
What, the draft of, now are you looking at the draft of the minutes or are you looking at the amendment to,
This is the one that.
what's that say? What's it
Ordinance
called?
amending the zoning and building code.
12323.
She sent out 2 emails.
Yeah, what's the title of it though?
Ordinance number, this is the ordinance.
Yeah, what I did,
Okay.
that's the ordinance that we went through, the last time. And what I did is I went through taking the notes and I incorporated them into that
this.
document
Okay, great.
best I could, other than for the sign ordinance
Yep.
reference.
So all we need to do is look at the sign ordinances and then decide what we want to put in this. And it's really gonna be what we want to put in all of our
And
zoning
one thing
districts.
that I can tell you, I wasn't absolutely clear about, remember we were having that discussion where, I think it was under permitted uses, that we said anything that's allowed in district number 4 or district number 5. I had in one place that said, take that out entirely, but then in the discussion, it was also said, but 5's okay. So I just took out 4. Now, I don't know if that was right or wrong, but when you read it, that's why I did it that way.
Well, I think it's better to have left 5 in, because if we still want to take 5 out, we can say so, but if you already took it out, we wouldn't know that it's missing, and we might, have wanted it to stay in, so. That works. All right, so we will revisit that item on next meeting. And then the next item we have is discussion to update the UDO and incorporation of the 1957 zoning ordinance. And with this one, Bill and Mary and I have talked about trying to combine the UDO and the zoning ordinance of 57, because it just doesn't make sense to have 2 separate ones.
Right.
And
And all the amendments to the 57 zoning.
right. So when we met last week to talk about this, and what we were wondering is if you would want to have either a special board meeting, or just, since we don't meet every zoning board meeting, if you want to do it at the zoning board meeting, maybe take a section of the UDO, like at a meeting, and say, okay, review it ahead of time, and then we'll come in and talk about it like we did with the RTMP, except we're not going to take as large of a section, so we're not going to be here for hours. But what we probably want to do is say, okay, the task is over the next 30 days is to read this one section and give your thoughts maybe ahead of time as to what you think we should do with that section. And then when we come to the zoning board meeting, Mary will have all of our thoughts, and then we can discuss them at that zoning board meeting. And we can talk about it, next meeting again as to the format and how you want to tackle it. But the zoning ordinance of 1957 is 50, 60 pages. UDO is 315, 330 pages. And trying to get them together is really what we're trying to do, is to make sure when we did those UDO, we tried to take all the language in the zoning ordinance of 57 and put it into that, so it had the exact same language, but it may not be there. And so what we're trying to do is to make sure that UDO is really going to be the one that's going to be the master one. We just want to make sure that everything in the original zoning ordinance of 57 is moved over into there. And then the UDO is going to now, at that point, apply to not only new construction, but existing buildings. Because right now, the 57 one applies to property with existing buildings. Right? Okay. So again, we're going to want to take the zoning ordinance of 57 and figure out where does it translate into our UDO, and then does that language, is it transferred word for word in there or not? And if not, do we like the UDO language? Do we like the original language? Do we want to change it? I can tell you, when the UDO process was started, it took forever. I mean, it must have taken 3 years or so. And we used to have weekly meetings until I dropped out, and they still had weekly meetings after. I mean, it
was brutal.
It was. Vivian Gaines, Chuck Van Sickle, Mary, and then Todd Wiegans for the longest time were the ones that sat, and I did through a point, sat through and went through item by item. But then it got to be where it was just way too much. You don't want to overwhelm the zoning board members with it, but at the same time, we would like your input. So we want to make sure we do it in a manner that's going to be efficient for your time, but also productive. So if you have some thoughts of maybe how we can do this, we're open to suggestions. But again, we're thinking about just trying to, how you take one document and put it into the other document, and maybe we're going to need you to maybe say, okay, if we tackle section 1 today, you're going to find that in UDO in these sections. And then maybe kind of.
Is there someone who is who really knows those documents well enough to dissect it in a way that makes sense and
Well,
assign this?
I would say Mary might. Seth has a good handle of it, but I'm not sure he's the one that's going to sit there and dissect it like that.
Right.
Well, and when we passed the UDO to begin with, I mean, you know, we had been through it 100 times, but can I tell you where everything is in every section? No, I don't think anybody can.
No.
But I have a kind of a different take on it. And that is that I think that we should, or I would suggest that we first go through the 57 zoning ordinance and say what you think of it. Because I've looked at other zoning ordinances from other places that I like a lot better, that I think are more complete. Because one of the problems with our 57 zoning ordinance, there's a lot of things in there, terms that are not defined. And that's what you run into a problem. So what I was doing was looking at other ordinances where I would be reading our zoning ordinance and then saying, oh, wait, is there a definition of that word? And I'd stop. And I mean, and of course, I don't, you know, it's not by any means, you know, finished or anything, but that's where we seem to have run into problems. I mean, I just remember how many times Chuck Van Sickle, former zoning board chairman, will call me and say, you know, there's no definition of such and such in there. There's no, how do we interpret that if there's no definition? And it's true. And that's why some of these other ones, I mean, they just have pages and pages and pages of definitions. So I think we have to determine before we pick it up and put it somewhere, do we even like it?
So that may be
So
the
that's
first
just
thing.
a thought.
That might be the first thing, is just to go so many pages or so many sections at a time and just read through it and discuss it. Just out in the open.
You know, and I mean, if it works for us, great. But does this make sense to you? Is it archaic now because it was in 57, which is now almost 66 years old?
Yeah.
Some of us know personally.
I think.
What was the thought of the committee, Mary, when they were developing the UDO and then they had this other document? Was it that it would be combined at some point, or that the ordinance, the 57 ordinance, would be just vacated, or?
At the time, it was that Todd Wiggins, who was our village engineer from Fairground, had experience with other municipalities, and one of them being the city of Rochelle. And so he took their UDO, and at the time, the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance, was intended to be for new development only, and it wasn't just us. City of Rockford did it that way, and other places like Rochelle, County of Winnebago, all of that. But what happened is, I think everybody learned like we did, oh my gosh, this is just too confusing to have these two separate documents. So eventually, then our neighbors to the east combined it into one document.
And we've seen that issue. Somebody who wants to build something new, they're under one standard, and then somebody who has a building and they want to zone it or get a variance, they're under possibly a different standard because they're written differently. And we don't want to have double standards.
It doesn't make sense to have two.
Right. So, you know, one of the things we can do is we can say, let's go through, like Mary said, the 57 one, and just say, what do you like, what do you don't like? Another thing is, you know, I don't know if you want to make it any more difficult by adding some of the zoning things that you like from other municipalities and say, here's one that I like, and have people read through that to get a comparison. You know, I don't know what you would like to do. I know sometimes when I'm looking at creating an ordinance, I like to look at 3 or 4 other municipalities to kind of get an idea of what they're looking at. And then you say, okay, I kind of like this, I kind of don't like this. And if we have an existing one, then I compare it to ours and what we've tried to do over the years, so it's not too different, but maybe we're updating it. You know, I know that one of our categories is basically says you can do anything except for basically residential. Anything you want to do, you can do. And then we do have certain things elsewhere that says, okay, you can't have certain types of shops or parlors or things like that. But other than that, you can do anything. And I'm not so sure that that's really what we want in our zoning categories. I think we want to have some control as to what goes in there. So I definitely believe we need to update that 57 ordinance.
And there've been many amendments to that 57 ordinance, and I have a document, but it's not totally up to date, where I incorporated those changes into that. And I had one of my staff painstakingly go through for each one, took the 57 zoning ordinance, took the next ordinance that passed, redlined it. And I've got that because I want to see how did that one change to that one. Saved it. Then in another document, accepted those changes, then went on to the next ordinance, redlined that. So if anybody's asked me, well, when did such and such happen? Well, we did that, and then that person left my office a few years ago, and honestly, we just haven't been able to get back to it. But there have been some changes since then. But I mean, we really have to be looking at, when we talk about the 57 zoning ordinance, with all of its amendments.
Right.
Because otherwise, it's not going to make sense. I think Hal had a question. Right?
Yeah.
Just a thought, the people who I've seen have to be most helpful in that kind of situation from outside of your group are people in engineering firms who represent developers who've seen dozens of ordinances and had to deal with them and can tell you, and you don't have to take their, just get their input and say, well, that's really hard to do, or that takes too long, or that's expensive. At least you get their input on, and they can be very helpful that way to you. I don't know if you probably have to pay them to do that, but it may be worth your time to have their input on it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I mean, we've reached out to some of our larger developers in the village and said, here, when we did the UDO, here's the UDO, please take a look at it, let us know if you think there need to be changes, because you're the ones that are going to be dealing with it. We didn't get any responses back, but we put it out. We put it out there to let them do that, because you're right. I mean, those that deal with it day in and day out are the ones that understand, and they can look at it and say, hey, this is beautiful, or there's a lot of things that are really, difficult to try and achieve here. We suggest these things. So I think that's something where once we do get to the point where we're trying to finalize what we think we want, it would be a good idea to send it out to our area developers and maybe, like you said, a separate engineer.
The engineering firms are a little more neutral.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they have to appear before you, usually on behalf of their clients.
Yeah.
So they probably are going to be a little bit more neutral or in the middle of it, rather than saying, that's crazy, I need this, because developers are going to ask for the best thing for them, which isn't always good for you.
Right. No, exactly. So, okay. So we will, when Bill is feeling better, I'll probably reach out to him and Mary again and just kind of talk about what we just talked about with going through it and bring it back at the next meeting, and then just see how we want to proceed with that. But definitely something that we want to get working on and get those items combined.
And then too, with us doing the codification of our ordinances finally, that will be a much more user-friendly thing, because I'm hoping that we will have the zoning included in that. You pay separately for that, but then when somebody is reviewing it, they can click on a word and it will take them to the ordinance. Once you get it set up, it'll take them to the ordinance that addresses that, take them to forms. So it'll just be a lot easier, for the people. Part of the thing too, when we were doing the Unified Development Ordinance, is spending a lot of time making it or trying to tailor it to the village. And with all due respect, with myself included, that, we've got to rely on the village engineer, because we don't know a lot of that's how it's going to affect a development, really.
Right.
That sort of thing. So we just, it sometimes would put us at a disadvantage. And you end up with a document that's got lots of pages and covers lots of stuff, but if nobody exactly knows what it means, it doesn't help us too much.
And I see that we have Mackenzie joining us right now. Mackenzie, if you could state your last name for us, please. Mackenzie, are you able to hear us? I don't know if Mackenzie is able to hear us or not, but we're about to wrap up the meeting anyway. Normally, we need to have the person's first and last name for the minutes.
Do we know who this is?
I don't know.
Oh.
All right.
Molly said she was gonna try to join, but I thought she was gonna, well, I don't know if she's doing it by phone or by,
Okay. Okay.
But she wouldn't be under the name Mackenzie, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Molly's signature.
Okay, thanks. All right, so we'll just go on to the next item, which is variance of landscape requirements for 312 West Main Street, Winnebago. Mary, Bill, and I did have an opportunity to meet with them, and we will take it off the agenda for tonight, and then when they're ready to bring it back, probably the next month or two, then they'll bring it back for that. They may be presenting more testimony, but they do have some things that they're investigating now for, and that's the property with the has the storage units there on West Main and South Swift Street, right across from your house. So they have some things that they're going to work on, and then they'll come back to us when they're ready.
An overall very positive meeting.
Yeah, no, it was a very good meeting. Worked a lot better to meet with them outside of the official zoning board meeting. All right. Next, we have new business. Is there any new business tonight? And I know Hal is here. He's with Trajectory Energy, the solar company that's interested in putting solar farm, solar arrays system off of Faulkner. And we have not had the ability to have all the zoning board members go through the draft of a solar ordinance, and Riley being new, we need to make sure that you have it. But what we're looking for is Bill wanted to have the opportunity to have us take a deep look into that because he feels that the board will not probably take as deep of a look as we will. So I think, was it Bill's, I think we talked about this before. Bill wanted to have us make our recommendation before the next meeting and then come back and then recommend a particular draft of the ordinance for the board.
Right, Bill was going to get to me what his initial thoughts were, and then he wanted to discuss that with this board.
So since he's not here tonight, obviously we don't know what he was thinking, but
Has the draft ordinance been prepared?
Oh, yeah, and you can't talk today. It was sent to, I think, in November.
Yeah.
But I certainly can resend it.
well, then please do it with Riley.
Yeah.
And then, as I mentioned before, I'll just kind of bring this up too at the same time. Randy Cook may be interested.
That's when I had COVID, so.
Oh.
That's right, yes, it was. I think it was around that time when she sent it out. But Randy Cook may be interested in coming back onto the zoning board to fill our last vacant spot. So I just let him know, send him an email, so he'll let us know for sure. But then Mary, if you could include him,
Okay.
just so he has it in case he does come on. And then, again, like we talked about other things, what I want is when Mary sends it out, take a look at it. And then as you're looking at it, if you have questions, you can email her. If you have comments or thoughts of what you would like or not like, let her know. There is an act from the state of Illinois. I don't know if it's been completely passed, but
It's passed, but the governor hasn't
Isn't
signed it
signed.
yet.
I printed it out and I'm going to take a look at it. I was going to try and read it today, but ended up not having enough time, but I do have it. My initial impression was that it only,
It applies to counties.
it applies to counties only.
At
It
this
applies
point in
where?
time.
Right.
Counties.
The counties. It doesn't affect municipalities at this point. But I just wanted to read it to get an understanding of how they were directing the counties to do things.
In terms of,
Solar, like setbacks, I believe, and where
Okay.
they could put it, and Hal probably knows a little bit more than.
I know a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in it, but the idea was to prevent counties from totally preventing solar projects. So it says, and in the bill, it actually has minimum standards. So the idea is that the counties will all adopt ordinances that have these minimum standards. They can't go beyond those standards and make it more restrictive, because that would be considered unreasonable and kind of more like a ban. So they want to prevent that from happening. So solar projects can go forward, but they still have to meet certain minimum standards. And they're kind of across the board.
And so what we would probably want to do is look at those minimum standards and just make sure where we are, because if they're going to make the counties do that, at some point they
It's
could come
coming,
along and
yeah.
say municipalities also. So we want to make sure that when we adopt one, that it would be sort of in compliance with what the state is saying as well to the counties. So if I, do you have that? Did you get that?
I did, I just hadn't been able to get it all.
I was gonna say-
I've been through it all, I've highlighted it all.
Yeah.
I've got the other sections, so I have to get it out to everybody.
Sure, okay.
And because again, it applies to counties, but it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
When it will come to the municipalities, I believe.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's on my list for this week to get out to everybody. And what it is and I don't know if you found the same thing, but it was kind of hard to find the actual act, not the summary, but the
Right.
actual act where they had the provisions that were added and all of that. Because of course, it's the typical bill that they would pass at this time of session, huge bill that has a gazillion things thrown in there, and there's one section that applies to this.
I was able to, at least I believe, find that in actually a printer-friendly portion, so I'll send
Yeah.
that out.
Because I have that, and I've highlighted.
You've got that one?
I've got that, I've highlighted it, yeah. But I'm just saying it was, sometimes you click on them and, immediately
It's
you
right
get
there.
the one.
But yeah,
But
no,
this
they-
time, it kept going to the summary, but then I finally was able to get the right one.
I just want to make sure that I've got a good understanding of this. So we have a company that's interested in bringing in solar,
Correct.
Solar farm,
a solar farm, but we don't have an ordinance for that yet.
Yep.
So we need an ordinance for that, or do we need an ordinance for that?
We need an ordinance for that.
You have one for the rooftop stuff, right?
No.
You don't even have that?
No.
But you
No.
want to have that too, but it would be
that's gonna be
different.
separate.
There will be two different kinds of things, so you would define them as being
So,
Okay.
either rooftop or solar, community solar.
so whether, and the residential one will be different. It'll be residential for one and then
Commercial.
commercial kind of for the other, whether it's on farmland or whether it's on.
Yeah, usually the state people, I'm sorry,
No,
state people define them as either what they call behind the meter, which is something that's either on a roof or next to a building, and the energy goes directly into the building, no matter if it's commercial or residential. And then a community solar is one where it's in a field, almost certainly. Sometimes it could be on a really big roof, but they're much bigger, usually several acres, and all the energy goes into the grid and then gets distributed by ComEd here into whoever the nearest places are needing the energy. So those are kind of technologically, it's a different thing. But community solar needs to have a certain size wire to go into the grid. The behind the meter ones are just going into your house or into your building, so they don't need as much of that. And they're much smaller.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Al, for the explanation.
And we would want the ordinance, of course, so that we can regulate certain things that go on with that development type of work.
So, all right, so Mary will be
I'll get
sending
that
that
out,
out to you
yeah.
as well. So
Thank you, Mary.
look for the solar ordinance information and then also the
Signs.
our RTMP and sign language for that.
Mary, I think I emailed you for facts over, because you had asked about us looking this over back in November and sending the comments directly to you. I think I did that already, but do it again.
Yeah, kind of not remembering that, and I thought I'd been through it all, but I'll double check. I'll tell you if I don't have it.
Okay.
Any other new business? All right. If none, we do not have the need for an executive session tonight, so if we could have a motion to, well, our next meeting will be Monday, February 27th at 6 PM. And if we could have a motion to adjourn,
Make a motion to adjourn?
do we have a second?
Second.
All right.
Mr. Emmert, Mr. Eubank,
Yes.
Mr. Koenig,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. McDougal,
Yes.
Mr. Pitney.
Yes.
All right, that concludes our meeting tonight. Thanks, sir, for joining us. And I'm going to stop the recording.
Do we still